Good afternoon on the West Coast, the East Coast, and in the center. This is how to fund your business ideas even in a recession. My name is Dante. I'll be taking you through this particular module today as part of the Australian Small Business Advisory Services Digital Solutions Program, all presented by Business Station in Western Australia, Regional Development Australia in Brisbane, Treaty Business Consulting in the Northern Territory. And this is a live session for those of you who are online with me with Zoom right now. You can chat, you can ask questions along the way. I'll hopefully be able to answer those questions for you. If not, I can park them for later on. So just a bit of housekeeping, just use those channels wisely. And if you're watching on YouTube after this has been recorded, just pop questions below in the comments and make sure you subscribe to either Business Station or to my own channel so you'll be able to do that and follow along for all the new updates we have from the program, as well as some great tips and tricks for really sort of helping your business to do so much better for a whole lot less. A quote here from Mark Andreessen, who's one of the great venture capitalists in Silicon Valley right now, is that entrepreneurs say that in an economic boom, it's actually hard to build a company because everyone's too excited and there's too much money funding too many marginal projects and companies. In tough times, though, there's less competition for the money, even if there's a little bit less going around. So kind of evens out. The tough times are quite good for getting investment money, but so are, the really good times as well. They just have a different kind of person, obviously funding different kinds of projects as we go along. So let's move on. A little bit about me is I'm a contributor to startups.com. I provide a lot of input from the Australian market for that particular course. It's all about helping startups do a whole lot better. I've borrowed some pretty good material from them today to go through. I've helped raise about $2.9 million in funding for very small business startups since 2018, just using these kind of techniques, these kind of places to look, and a lot of government grants and stuff like that as well. I work with the NT's Business Growth Program, the NT Business Innovation Program, or BIP, with the Departments of Industry, Trade and Tourism. I'm also working a little bit now with the Queensland government grants as well. Even though I'm not based there, I'm not a provider in Queensland, I do work with providers in Queensland to help Queensland businesses access those too. And my other roles are with Facebook Australia and New Zealand as a community trainer. So I go around the country when we're allowed to, and there's no border closures, to train people on how to get more out of the Facebook family of apps. And also with Treaty Business Consulting, who is one of the partners with the ASBAS Digital Solutions Program. So the 4 stages we're going to go through today is the idea of structuring your fundraise, looking at investor selection, crafting your pitch, and doing a bit of investor outreach. This is if you're looking for investors in your business, but there's also other ways we're going to look at that don't look at actually getting investment in from people who want a piece of your business along the way. So the 4 stages of the investor cycle will be that you need to structure what you're going to do with your fundraising to make sure everything's, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, to ensure that you've got the best possible chance to get at least in front of people who are investing. Looking at the kind of people you do want to flirt with, I guess, on the dance floor to get them to invest with your particular business. We want to work on crafting your pitch to get a bit better, I guess, optimized for the perfect kind of person to do it, as well as investor outreach, which is going out there and looking for specific investors for your very specific business idea that you're trying to raise. But first we look at where are the different places that you need to look towards to get that money in. So the obvious answer is government grants. That's a very good start. And depending on where you're going, just to answer David's question, the slides you can't get, but this will be recorded and put onto YouTube, and you will be sent the link to that YouTube channel after this. So that will come in the next hour or two. So government grants are usually the most obvious way we think of getting money. The problem is if you're a startup and you've got no track record behind you and no cash flow, quite often the government grant path is closed to you because you need to be raising at least, about that $75,000 and reaching the GST payment level to attract any kind of state or territory government grants. And then it sort of slides up from there, where you get people also getting hold of you from through federal government grants, for instance, some business and innovation grants, that kind of thing, which will help you along too. Then private investment is the next place we go to, where we're actually looking for investors out there in the marketplace who may want to bring money into it. Now, that could be a family member. It could be a friend. It could be someone you're already working with. It could be another company. It could be someone you've never heard from, like hedge funds and investment funds and angel investors and all those different kinds of people who have money to spend on ideas and they want to bring those in. Now, we're talking largely in private investment is where we're looking for things that have got a very good chance of succeeding, are I guess, an innovative idea, something that's very new, something that's very well thought out, something that's very well built to this point, or an idea at least that's very unique and has a great big chance of succeeding. And then we look at things like loans and credit cards as well, and what you're going to require to get those. Building a business on a credit card, probably not the wisest way to go, but sometimes it's the option that works best for a particular kind of business, and we'll look at that later on. So as we move on, we move into government grants. They're usually quite small and under about that $50,000 mark. They tend to be tied to certain goals. So they're tied to government goals of business and innovation growth. They could be tied to government goals of economic activity, adding to the diversification of a regional economy. So particularly if you're in an area of Australia that's very much exposed to coal mining, and there's not a lot of coal going out of Australia at the moment due to a little bit of a hold up with some ships in China, then you may be in an area that's getting some kind of assistance from the government to look for businesses to start up with new ideas that are outside of dependence upon fossil fuels. The same thing can go for agricultural areas that have got incentives to become more than just a wheat producing area or more than just a mango farming community. Some are easy to get. An example I'll give to you here is the Digital Solutions Grant in the Northern Territory can be very easy to get because you don't have to qualify by much. You've got to have at least $75,000 worth of revenue coming through your business. So you register for GST. And that's just simply because if they're going to invest another $5,000 in your business, so they are very, very small grants, they want to know that they're investing in something which is likely to have some kind of good impact on the community and the economy in general. If they're just investing money into things that are really not working, this could be a really dangerous thing and they could be losing a lot of money. And governments, they just cop it when they go and invest in things that people don't really agree to or things that don't work. We're expecting that some of these things are going to tighten a bit after the whole COVID thing's over. We've borrowed a lot of money as a nation during the COVID crisis with JobKeeper allowances and job seeker allowances and the abilities for there's grants going left, right and center for different kinds of economic activity right now. So at some point that's going to be tightened or even shut down in some cases. So that's going to get a little harder to get once we get out of 2021 heading into 2022. There are some that are available through Commonwealth government grants. So through Department of Jobs and Employment, and those kind of very large grants tend to be for helping people to export, for instance, through Austrade. But then there's state and territory based ones in Queensland, Northern Territory and Western Australia that all tie into very much keeping your business in that particular state or territory and encouraging that business to grow to the point where it can create jobs. And not a lot of the governments are interested in investing in things that won't create jobs. You're just creating things because it's this will be really cool and you're going to outsource everything to China for production. You're going to outsource all the customer service to the Philippines. That's all going to be great for you, but there's nothing in it for where you live. So in that case, you might have a bit of trouble getting that kind of grant. Private investment is generally larger. You're looking at over $50,000, sometimes about $20,000, depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to build a food truck, well, that private investment is probably going to be from family and friends. It's not going to be a lot of money, but it might be enough for you to get that food truck, right? But we're talking about bigger stuff here. It usually requires some kind of equity in your business. So they'll take a holding in your business, a percentage of what's going on. That can range from a percentage of the business as a whole in terms of shares, which is something you'd have to do with the company structure and shareholding, or it could be a percentage of turnover that's coming in, or a percentage of profit. So it could be a profit share arrangement that you may want to set up. Now, sometimes this has to be paid back. So they're going to give you $50,000 and they expect that will be paid back. And then that's fine. They don't want anything more as long as you pay it back. But more often than not, what they're looking for is rather than payback, they're looking for equity in the business. So as the business starts to move and grow and starts to make some revenue, then it's in a position for them to be able to draw money from that as a shareholder. They get a payout or a dividend on what they've invested in and on what their holding of the company is. So if you've just made $1 million, if their shareholding is 10% of the business, they get 10% of that million, if that's what your revenue model is. If your profit out of that $1 million was only $100,000, then their 10% is only going to be, what, $10,000. So there's going to be different sizes according to the agreements you have. They have to be legal contracts. You cannot just fudge this one and just hope for the best, because these people who do privately invest, they have lawyers. So you need to get lawyers too. So you got to make sure you lawyer up, get these agreements signed by both parties so you all understand what's going on, get good legal advice and people who can look over these things for you so you don't get ripped off, because it's very easy to. We've all watched Shark Tank on Channel 10 when that's playing. We can see some cases where the sharks are circling. They're trying to get a really good holding in a business for a very low amount of money. Whereas what really needs to happen is probably for that person who's trying to get investment, they're looking for a lot of money for a very small shareholding, willing to give up maybe 5%, 2% of that, and asking for like, $100,000. And the sharks are going, "You got to be dreaming, mate. We're not going to pay that much for such a small shareholding." There's not a huge funding community in Australia, so you got like your Mark Borris's and like the Shark Tank kind of people, but there's other more silent investors who don't really want to be known too much to be investors. They're not celebrity investors. They're not Scott Papes and the barefoot investor kind of people. These are more just the everyday people who do have excess money to be investing in the future in some high yield and also high risk small business ventures. Now, the kind of things they generally will go for are not, "Oh, I'm starting up a coaching business and I'm going to have an online course." That's not what they're going to invest in. They're not things like, "I'm starting up a cafe in an area where there's 50 other cafes." They're not going to invest in that. What they may invest in, though, is ideas for products and ideas for apps and for software, for online services. That kind of thing are very popular in Australia right now, but there's still others who will invest in small parts of, say, clothing companies. So producing kids' clothing when there's a good brand involved. So if you've worked out a really good brand, not just the name of your babies or not just the name of you and your sister, a really decent brand name where you've got killing baby clothes, kids' clothes, adults' clothes, you've got something which they look at and go, "That's a brand that's got a real zing to it. I could sell this. This is good. This could really take off." That's when you seem to get private investment coming into some of those more traditional work from home kind of model businesses. Like I said, though, not a huge funding community in Australia, and most of them are in Sydney, a smaller amount in Melbourne, even smaller amounts outside of there in Brisbane and Perth. And then, the Adelaide community is not really that existent, and in regional areas. So we're talking Cairns, Townsville, Mackay, Toowoomba, Darwin, Alice Springs, Karratha, Port Hedland, Broome, Geraldton. There's almost no private investment going on in that kind of business. But that doesn't mean you can't go to a big city and attract the sharks to come and take a bite. Loans and credit cards are usually for things that you need that are under about $5,000. You don't really necessarily want to get into like a $20,000 credit card, though for cash flow reasons, that can be a very viable way of helping to top up the business and keep cash flow going through while you're waiting for invoices to be paid. The trap is, though, and I've done it before myself, is where you run up a credit card, $20,000, because you're waiting for invoices to be paid and the client never pays. They just go away. They don't pay, or they go bust, or you're stuck holding that $20,000 debt on a credit card. It's not a great place to be in. Now, loans for this kind of thing usually top out at around about $100,000, but looking at actual business loans can go much, much higher. So actual business loans can help you to purchase a McDonald's franchise, for instance, or a KFC, or not so much KFC, they don't franchise so much, but a franchise of some degree, like maybe Muzzbuzz or Zarrafa's Coffee or something like that, where you want to go and invest into something that's going to kind of be done for you. Now, these usually attract quite high interest, though, so you're not going to be obviously buying a franchise on that, but attracting a loan is more of a case of proving that you're able to do those repayments over the time, and you've got all the paperwork and all the setup that's in place to show that you've done your due diligence. You've done all the checks and balances to make sure that this business has a good chance of surviving. Some of the programs that run from the government, like the NEIS program, New Enterprise Incentive Scheme, can help you to get to that point by spending your first year actually being paid to start your business. So in that case, they'll pay you the equivalent of what Job Seeker, Job Finder, and all that sort of those new start-ish kind of allowances are. Give you a certificate 4 in small business, or a certificate 3 in new entrepreneurship, or something like that it's called. And so they will pay for that, as opposed, and you can still attract that, but you're only got a limited amount of hours that you can work outside of that. So you can't be running a full-time gig and earning $110,000 for the government and then coming and collecting an allowance as well to start your business. This is made for you to help supplement that you're going to take a while to start this business up. You get 12 months of mentorship, 12 months of training and a certificate, and 9 months of funding of your time. And yes, that has got a cap on it, but the idea is that you're already doing work outside, and hopefully by about month 3, your business is making some cash flow, so you don't have to be so reliant upon that government payment coming through. Now, that kind of program lends itself really nicely in year 2 to being able to get business loans, because it's shown you've got a certificate, it's shown you've got 12 months under your belt, it's shown that you've got the ability to be able to keep a business going after 12 months and making it even mildly profitable. That's what a bank wants to see. They want to see growth and potential, because ultimately what they want to do is lend you this amount of money, say $250,000 to fit out your shop. And they want to see that when that's done and you're settled, then you want to expand. And the first place you'll go is to them, because that's who your business loan specialist is. So the first loan is probably something that they will make money off. The second, third, and fourth loans you do with them, that's where they make their really big money. Now, there is the SME guarantee scheme at the moment, the small and medium enterprise guarantee scheme, which is offering banks and financial institutions to give credit and loans to small businesses that do pass certain qualification criteria, that allows them to access this kind of stuff. And the bank is much more willing to give that cash, because the government's guaranteeing for that amount. That's only for about $100,000. You're not going to get an unlimited amount of money, but what it does guarantee that if you do go bust because of COVID and border closures and any of those sort of reasons, that the government will still pay the bank for that loan. So there's a guarantee in there that the bank will still get paid, even if you go bust and you can't pay it back. What the government then does with you is then has to track down that cash over a period of time through your tax. So it's not like you get out of it, you're then in debt to the government. So just bear that in mind. That might be an option for you, but there are some things that aren't quite what they seem in that particular arrangement too. The SME guarantee scheme guarantees credit facilities, not $100,000, $250,000. It offers term loans and lines of credit. You do remain liable for the payment of the loan, even if you can't pay off the lender. So that's the real big key there. It's not really made for new ideas. It's made for helping businesses to stay open. So this is for a business who goes, look, if I don't open up this second shop down the road here for $250,000, I'll go bust because the current location isn't working. You can find out more about that at business.gov.au. And they've got all the information that helps you to attract that sort of money there. So this is more so for keeping the doors open rather than, hey, I've got an idea for a new app, give me some money. That's not necessarily going to come through here. That's very high risk stuff, and it doesn't protect jobs so much. So step 1 in this whole thing, once we've decided sort of path we want to go down, we have to structure what we're going to do about this particular fundraise. So think about it this way. When the going gets tough, your passion for your business is going to be what carries you on. And that needs to carry across in the structuring of your fundraising. So there's 3 different ways you can do a fundraise. It's through bootstrapping, which is basically self-fundraising. So you do your own funding, you do it yourself, mum, dad, brother, sister, cousins, aunt and uncle, that rich uncle that you don't talk to, but it's got tons of money. Yeah, that's getting money from them. And so it's essentially like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and making yourself go along without having to get outside money from investors or from banks and getting debt. Your next one is equity. So we're talking about that just briefly before, the idea that you can attract a Shark Tank style investor and they will give you money in exchange for a piece of your business. So this is a scary thing for some people, because you're essentially getting a business partner of a certain percent. That business partner could be a 10% partner. that partner may demand that they have 49% of your business, which is pretty much half of your business, but not the controlling area. It may mean that if you've got a board on your business of directors, then you may be stuck with someone on your board who you hate and hate working with. This is a risk that comes with equity. Debt then obviously has its own pros and cons. It could be a very heavy burden to carry, or it could be something you're handling quite well. So bootstrapping is using what is essentially your own capital, your own input. So your own credit cards, the purchases by customers. So it's self-funding as they pay you, you are able to pay your bills, or the margin you're making on each product is helping to pay for the next stage of your business's development. Things like eating 2-minute noodles to save money. Don't laugh at that. This was a very serious part of the start of my business, and particularly my most recent business, the only one that's really succeeded really well, is that I had to go through a period there where it was either the payroll or the car repayments, and I had to choose the payroll. So I had to essentially lose my car for a while. It wasn't a very nice way to go, but it's one of those sacrifices you make when you're growing a business and you're bootstrapping it for yourself. There's always plan A. This is always plan A because this is the easiest way to get it, and it's not going to cost you so much, and you're not losing a part of your business. It's what we call sweat equity. So this is the amount of money and time that you're putting into it yourself. The amount of effort you're putting into it yourself, your time, particularly your time. Like your time is probably the one thing that's going to go in here the most. It's from your friends and your family, those who trust you and want to support you. It's using charge cards like Amex cards or store cards or an Officeworks card or something like that, and using things like savings. So if you've got, $50,000 saved in a bank account somewhere, it's going and whittling that thing down. And in some very, very rare cases, I utterly do not think you should ever do this, superannuation and dipping into that. Please don't do it. Crowdfunding is another way of bootstrapping. You're not getting investors, you're getting supporters. So if you're doing something that's particularly in a cause, so for instance, if you're doing something to do with Aboriginal health, Aboriginal art, you're doing something with the LGBTIQA community, for women, for men's mental health, and it's a business you're creating around that, you can do quite well out of platforms like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe. GoFundMe is more so, for causes, but Indiegogo and Kickstarter can be a place where you're actually doing a product. You've got an idea, you built it out, you've got a product. And I've got an example of a Kickstarter I bought myself really recently, haven't used it yet, but I can't wait to, is a thing called Maunocaster. It's someone who put together this basically podcast studio in a box. And it was great. At the moment, most podcast setups a bit, you buy a bit here, a bit there, go get that from over there, that from over here. This is just one big box that has everything you need to start a podcast and run it really successfully with an interview setup and everything. Really, really fun thing to do. Got it at a really good rate because I was a very early adopter of that. And when I got it, everything works and it's fine and I love it and it's great. I just haven't really used it yet to do my podcast because my podcast is kind of languishing in the way. But that's an idea of raising enough money for them to develop their product to the point where they can take that now to market and sell it commercially anywhere. They've proven the concept. They got their first lot of customers. They got the first lot of people paying for that particular product, and they're making just a slight loss on it actually at the moment. But now it's proven that it can be done. It can be done in large numbers, so they can now produce this thing as a product and sell it commercially to JB Hi-Fi or sell it to Harvey Norman and places like that who are looking for great little packages of things that they can just go. Someone walks on and says, "I want to start a podcast," and they go, "Here you go. Here's a big box, podcast in a box." Facebook can be a great place to crowdfund as well if you're looking for just small amounts of money to achieve a project, for instance. So that project could be that we are looking to open up a food truck cafe on the beach in, I'm not going to say Cottesloe because that's probably too crowded already with restaurants. It wouldn't be too happy. But there's some beach which is like an up-and-coming beach, maybe Trigg Beach in Perth, or somewhere like Rainbow Bay in Queensland, where it's a little bit quieter and someone's looking to start up something like that. They can do fundraising through Facebook. You don't have to be a not-for-profit. to fundraise on Facebook. You can raise money for yourself. There's fundraising tools that allow you to do that, not as a charity, but as a person asking for money to support an idea. So that's another place you can do it. There's fees involved with it, like there is in Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and GoFundMe, but they're pretty low, and it works through PayPal. So you're going to have that ability for people to show some support for what you're doing. And if it's a particularly great community project, you can raise a lot of money through something like Facebook. Customer capital is a really interesting concept, and you quite often see this with when a new gym opens in an area. What they'll have is something like an early adopter or an early bird buyer or a foundation member. And this is getting people to sign up before the thing is open. So it could be 3 months before the new, let's just say Anytime Fitness is opening up in your particular town. So what they do, they get a whole bunch of people to sign up for it 3 months in advance and to pay 12 months in advance to as a foundation member for a very significantly discounted rate, like to the equivalence of saying, get 12 months membership for the price of 3 months. And so what they do, they get a whole bunch of cash in one glut. And they know at gyms particularly that people tend to get very, very motivated when they first start. They get very, very excited when they first start up. Then they sort of fade away. And the next thing you don't know where they are, and they're never turning up to the gym anymore. I'm one of those people. Anyway, with foundational members, that's a way of getting in a whole ton of cash all in one great big bucket. And then as you whittle that cash down, you're then getting new members in all the time. So your foundational members will get this special price for 12 months or even longer. It could be a lifetime deal. Quite often AppSumo is a really good place to show how customer capital helps raise software companies. They're creating online tools and online apps and things like that. And you go to AppSumo and you buy it on a lifetime deal for $49 US, which is the equivalent, of maybe a couple of months of access to that particular thing, but you get it for a lifetime. Now, the beauty for the AppSumo customer is, for the person who's trying to get their app going or their software going through there, is they get a big glut of money straight in. It's what they call the customer capital, which allows them to pay their bills, keep their lights on until they can develop enough of a customer feedback system and then people referring it on. So people like myself who often refer on a tool called InVideo, which I got through AppSumo on a customer capital lifetime deal. I'll refer people in and say, this tool's amazing, you should use that. And then they're getting full price paying monthly subscription buying people to do that. So that's a way to raise enough money to run a system, is by, I guess, getting a lot of money up front for a lifetime deal or lifetime access. And then you're able to use that money to pay for the next level of development. And then finally you get those, normal paying commercial customers down the track who are your bread and butter that pay your bills every single month. Equity is using an investor's money. So investors, as we said, give you money in exchange for a piece of the company. There could be angel investors who seem to come from nowhere, floating down out of the heavens to give you money. Venture capitalists, who you see them coming from a mile off because they're very hardcore and they want a piece of that company enough that they can make some big money in the future, and they tend to hold on for that for quite a long time. An example of venture capital will be someone like Bain Capital, who own Virgin Australia now. They invest millions upon millions and millions of dollars into things that they think are going to perform really well in the future. If they can't own them outright, they'll at least own enough of it so that they will get a significant piece of the dividends of that business in the future when things start to run a little bit better. We'll see how we go with Virgin Australia, hey? If you're carrying debt, you're using banks or you're using lenders. So you can borrow money, you can get it from banks, non-banking financial institutions, credit unions. Some investors will do this through banks as well, especially finance companies as well. So there might be specific finance companies, business investment companies that will actually do this kind of thing. Quite often I see them pop up on Facebook as an ad. They're looking to go, we're looking to do loans for businesses with great ideas, and they're not looking for a piece of your company. They're just giving you a loan, usually at a pretty hefty interest rate, but they're one of the ones that'll take a bit more risk and will accept that your business may not work in the future, but they've got one or two holdings in ones that will work well. And they sort of spread that risk and that interest rate over, 50, 100, 150, 2,000 different businesses, hopefully with most of them paying what they should be paying, and they're not losing money. You might probably have a bit of a mixed bag. You might start off with mum and dad giving you a bit of cash to get the thing going. You might just do a little bit of fundraising through Kickstarter to help you get that idea off the ground. And then you might get a loan as well. So there's different, it's not like you're choosing one thing and you have to just do that one. The one word of warning I'll give you though, is that once you start with investor capital, so you're getting other companies and other individuals to partner with you to give you money to develop the company further, that the decisions you then make from that point forward for things like fundraising, for other investors coming in, for making money, getting loans, that all has to kind of run through them then too. So you're not losing just a piece of your company. In many cases, you're losing a piece of the control. So please be aware if you're going to do that, and it's fine to do that. It's a completely normal, natural way to grow a business. You are giving away a piece of the control of all that. So if you're someone who doesn't play well with others, if you're someone who doesn't share your toys very well with others, you're one of those kids that doesn't want to share the sandpit with other kids, that may not be for you. And for a lot of men, this is a very common thing. We're not very good at sharing. So that might not be the way for you to go. That said, though, not every one of those equity partnerships means that they want to have any sort of management input. In fact, about 50% of them don't want any input in the management, the day-to-day operations and decision-making. They just want to collect the check when that company becomes profitable, because you're one in a portfolio of hundreds of risks they're taking right now, and they don't have time to be management. But if things go really bad in your company, they'll often go, look, we can send in our management who are used to turning around, these dead horses and turning them into, Melbourne Cup winners. Then that might be something which is on offer as well. That will be all part, though, of your partnership agreement that you do with any sort of investment capital investor. So how much do you need? This is where you need to work out what the level of investment or loan or something like that you need. So you're looking for something that's going to help you run for 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, longer than that, and breaking down what you actually want to do in the small chunks. The example being the Maunocaster brand, the little podcast thing, right? They knew that they needed to produce a particular manufacturer, particular microphone stand, headphones, little box that everything plugs into that then goes into the computer. They had all that set up in such a way that they have to make sure that each of those individual pieces could be developed. Then they realized halfway through that they couldn't work on a Mac natively through a USB Type-C connection. You can only go through a normal USB-A type connection or USB-B type connection. So those kind of ones meant they had to then develop a new one. So in that, they had to go, well, we need enough money to get us 3 months of runway capital to keep running the business without any potential income, just to develop this one that's going to work on Mac, because we've had a lot of people in their community who want a version that works natively on a Macintosh computer. So that's great. They did that, and it won for them. They got enough people, then back them on Kickstarter to be able to then move on to the next level of what they want to do, which is to take this out to producing big enough numbers to be able to sell in places like Best Buy in America, which is sort of America's version of something like JB Hi-Fi, I guess. Very, very similar concept to JB Hi-Fi. So then you've got to set yourself milestones that help you to calculate what you'll need and for how long you're going to need it. So we're talking about saying that within 6 months, 3 months, we need X amount of dollars to be able to achieve this particular project or this particular business decision. Let's go back to, say, the cafe. So the cafe is saying in 3 months, we need to get another coffee machine and hire another barista. To do that, we can't really afford it on our current levels of revenue, but we're going to make this investment to drive in more customers and to be able to produce more takeaway coffee and Uber Eats stuff. So we can get things in and out the door a lot quicker. We don't have people sort of hanging around and milling about in the cafe, which is great. So they get that within the 3 months and it works. And it's great. They get a lot more customers in. They're paying off their whatever the debt is, or they're paying off the, there's enough money coming through to be paying the dividend to that investor. And the investor says, well, you know what? Why stop here? Let's open up another coffee shop somewhere else in the same process that we've done here. So they will get then another lot of money and say it's going to take us $2.2 million to set up this coffee shop in this particular suburb and this particular size to have a drive-through section to serve drive-through coffee. We want to invest that much because what we need to do is to have something which is going to grow more and more in the future and diversify our income to not just takeaway coffee, but drive-through coffee. So they do that. So now 9 months into the process, they've got a drive-through coffee shop and their original coffee shop. Next thing is they want to then, after 12 months, grow this thing into 20 locations throughout the western suburbs, which is great. That's going to take, $52 million or something. So in that case, that's a lot more investment coming from that partner or another partner. They decide they'll get a third partner in who's going to do that. And then they have to calculate what it's going to take to grow the business to that kind of level. And then what the expectations are for the return on that investment. You've got to sell a lot of coffees to be able to pay off those kind of debts and investments. So what you'll find is that partner who comes in and wants to buy that will probably want a very large holding of that, which means that you and your first partner have got a much smaller slice of the pie now. It does sound scary when you're doing that, but this is a very natural process for those rapidly expanding businesses that have come from nothing to become something quite impressive in as little as 5 years. This can also be for apps. Apps are probably the perfect example of this, actually, because they come from absolutely nowhere, got no money whatsoever. They've just got a MacBook Pro and an iPhone, and they're able to build something in Xcode and create this amazing thing that suddenly takes off, and they need to buy web hosting and Amazon web hosting and Azure, cloud hosting, and they have to suddenly hire all these people to help them to keep up with the development work. That's when investment comes in handy, because you cannot necessarily do all that on your own. You might have a whiz kid working with you, but eventually they get too busy as well, and you need to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So an example here would be milestone 1, which is going to cost you $25,000 to set up the technology for a particular business. So you go, the project we're setting up is going to take that much, so that we need $25,000 from the bank, from the investor, from wherever you're going to get it, right? Step 2 would be milestone 2, which is to build yourself a working prototype of what you're doing. So if you're building a physical product, then your prototype comes in here and says that's another $18,000 for the materials involved in this. So we can build out our prototype and our test to make sure this thing actually does work. Then milestone 3 could be to commercialize that, to get it out into the market, to market stalls, to shops, to online selling through a Shopify website, all that kind of thing. That's when you might need, I need a good $150,000 for that, because I need to pay someone $50,000 to go and sell it to places in shops. And then I also want to be able to do this thing where I've got the ability to be able to get my website built, which is going to cost me $20,000 or something like that to get that particular thing set up and ready to go, and then requiring a further $80,000 to be able to build out the marketing. So the Facebook ads, the get known stuff of getting that particular product out there to a market so people know what it is and know where to buy it from. So you can see how these things add up, and there'll be 3 maybe different rounds of investment. You could say the first round is $25,000, the second round, 18, your third round of investment, $150,000. This is a very common model for building apps, a very common model for building very new kind of technologies, like a lot of the Beyond Burger kind of meat. So those plant-based meat patties and sausages and fake meats. A lot of those start off here. They start off with building out the technology they require to build the lab to actually do the test. Then milestone 2 is, okay, we've now built the burger, and the burger is costing us about $18 per patty to be able to produce. So we need to sell it about $25 to make a profit. That's not going to work. So we need to commercialize it, which involves getting it out in the market, but also getting the cost per patty down from $18 to $1. So they can sell it at a much higher volume and higher rate, higher margin, so that it's still within a commercially viable buying range for customers. So there's some great examples there of stuff. I'm not quite sure what you're doing with your business. You could be doing something very different, But I would say that if you look at your milestones, what you've got to look at what proves that you're moving forward. So no one's going to give you money unless you can prove that this particular milestone moves you forward to something new. You don't want to be investing money into something which is not actually moving that business forward. It's just quite simply going, oh yeah, this is really fun. We're having fun. We're a bunch of like friends from university and we want to make some money. Give us some money. It's nothing like that. It's about saying, you give us $25,000, which allows us to do this, which allows the company to move forward with the chance of making an additional $2.3 million. That's a great reason for a company to invest in you or for a bank to give you the money. You look at what is required in there. Now, I did mention staff, for instance. If you're going to expand something out to go to a lot of different retail stores, who is going to do that selling and that business development? Is that you? Or do you have to get someone in who's really good at getting on the phone and getting appointments? Those people aren't going to come cheap. You're not going to get them for $25 an hour. A kid straight out of a TAFE isn't going to do that for you. You're going to have to get someone experienced who really knows how to sell. Things like your materials for building that thing, you know, the nuts and the bolts, the ingredients of that food, the ingredients of that particular, therapeutic ingredient. Marketing, which is a huge cost. And this is going to be one of your biggest ongoing costs of all, your staff. And then marketing would probably be second or third in terms of the big costs of your business, because you have to let people know that this thing exists and where they can buy it from, what the features are and what the benefits are, and give them a reason to be able to buy it, because they're not just going to discover it. It's just not going to happen that way. You have to put something out there. You have to build websites. You have to build campaigns. You have to go on Facebook. You have to go on Instagram. You might have to buy from influencers and pay some influencers to introduce your product to the world. And then you look at what's the time to actually delivering each of these milestones. So these are not just give me money and I'll build the thing. It's give me money and I'll build the thing by this date. Those measurable milestones, they're called milestones because they show you how far you've gone along, but they also show you how far to go. So make sure that you've got very measurable dates when you're looking for that kind of input from an investor. So not every source is going to fund you. You may find that angel investors are not going to pop in and they're not going to lend you money like a bank would. So equity investors tend to come in for things like software, hardware, healthcare kind of devices and healthcare technologies. And you'll get things like your angel investors and venture capitalists will come in from that, and hedge funds that want to go, this is a really good investment. I want to get in nice and early, like the early stage investors in Facebook, who within a year of their investment were literally making millions upon the shares they had. Going into debt tends to suit, you get that from like banks and other commercial lenders. That's very good for shop fronts, bricks and mortar, restaurants, retail outlets, property, any of those sort of things, which are considered to be something that's very easy to liquidate and sell and move on from if something goes wrong. Other things like your credit lines and your specialty finance tend to lend themselves into clothing and fashion, fast-moving consumer goods, consumer electronics, and services. So when I say services, it's setting up things like physiotherapy studios, nail salons, hairdressers, services that people go there to have something done to them, whether it's to their head or it's to their body. It tends to be around that stuff. So your equity people are not going to be really looking for investing in a cafe, for instance. Banks will look at doing that. Your banks are not going to really look at high risk stuff such as your great app idea. That's not what they're going to invest in. But equity partners will do that because they absorb a lot more risk, because what they try to do is get like that one great big unicorn, that idea that takes off beyond every single other thing that takes off. So when do you offer equity in your business? When's a good time to do that? This is when you have a long pathway before you're guaranteed to make money. So this is why you need the equity, because this thing won't make money for a while. Uber is still not turning a profit. All these years later, still not turning a profit. Is 100% funded by venture capitalists and equity partners. It's getting very close now to running at its first profit, but it's had to have a lot of changes to get it there. You think of that, right? Billions upon billions upon billions of dollars have gone into that company. and it's yet to turn a profit. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? So they've got a very long line to go along until they actually expect to make money. Now, believe it or not, even though Uber's been around for how many years, it's still regarded to be a great investment because it is expected to make a heck of a lot of money in the future as the default way of the way people transport themselves, equipment, deliveries, all that around. You don't need to use a courier anymore. You can use Uber. They'll pick up a package and take it to another place in town. Isn't that amazing? So when you've got no security for a loan, so you want to be able to get yourself a business started and you want to invest in that business and grow it and buy premises and buy a lab to set up all the stuff you need to produce that particular product you're working on, but you don't have any security for that. You don't have a house that you can like put on as security as to leverage against the amount of money you want to borrow. That's when you offer equity in your business to an investment partner. When you can't do a bootstrapping. So for instance, you need a $150,000 wash bay for your car detailing business, right? It needs to be 3 or 4 cars can fit in there at the one time, and it's going to cost you 150 grand. No one in your family or your friends have got 150 grand they're going to give you. So you can't go down those bootstrap paths. There's no way you're going to save that much money. So you offer then an equity in your business for a partner to come in and invest that money for you. Or it's where you expect that your business is going to grow unusually fast. Things like apps, things like new consumer products, which suddenly become trendy. You can see that down the road, this thing will grow, but not just grow, it'll grow super, super fast. The problem with fast growth is you need to be able to scale yourself up. That means very quickly scaling staff, very quickly hiring people to fill call centers, very quickly expanding your website from being able to run on a shared host in Australia to having to run on Amazon Web Services and be mirrored in 100 different locations around the world. Fast growth is really hard to handle. Having had a business that grew really, really quick myself, not to those kind of like stratospheric conditions of something like an app like Uber, but it grew fast enough that actually I couldn't grow with it. I couldn't attract the investment for it. I didn't want to give away any parts of that business. And I couldn't get a loan for it because it's too risky. So it got to a certain point, it just stalled. And it just stopped there and then just went down, 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 down because I wouldn't give away a part of it. Equity investment at that point in the business and someone to advise me along the way would have been so in hindsight, really helpful and helped me along with it. But equity investors are looking for very big outcomes because they're taking very big risks. So they're not going to come in and want to take just 2% of your business. They're going to want more. There's a lot of competition out there for equity investors because everyone's got these great ideas that they need some money for. Everyone's trying to build a new Facebook. Everyone's trying to build a new Uber. Everyone's trying to build the new Uber Eats. So there's lots of stuff out there that people are trying to build and it's attracting that investment coming in. That's why a lot of Australian businesses don't necessarily go straight to the equity investment model. They'll go out and try and get their money from the government. And it does take a while for you to find one. And once you've given away that slice, you're never going to get that slice back. They're going to keep it, or they can do whatever they want with that slice. They can actually pass it on to someone else if they want to. They can sell their interest in the business to whoever they like, unless you've got something that's in the contract between the two of you that says it's only to be sold in consultation with you. But then in this case, if you're looking for a lot of money, they've got the leverage, you don't. There's a lot more to do. There's like selecting an investor, there's crafting your pitch, there's reaching out to them. There's a lot of stuff you need to do in order to be doing it. So selecting an investor is a process of, finding who is the right investor for you. And it's got to be more than just like, oh yeah, I'd have a beer with that guy. Or yeah, I could sit down and talk about my family with her. She seems to be a really nice person. Sometimes selecting an investor is not about picking the nice person. It's about picking the person who's going to push you to your limits. Crafting your pitch to investor is all about making sure that your elevator pitch is correct, that your business plan is in place, having a business plan written is absolutely vital. So as I was saying before, that NICE program, New Enterprise Incentive Scheme, helps you with all that. It gets your business plan together. So those kind of pieces are already in place so that you can start to do those things. Even if you're in a particular part of Australia like Cairns, I think Mandurah in WA has got it as well. Darwin in the Northern Territory has got it. Have an entrepreneurship facilitators program that helping to create businesses. They can help you with things like getting your business plan written as well. And of course, then you've got to reach out to those investors. You've got to find them and then reach out to them and, you know, have coffee with them, have a beer with them, have them for dinner with them. If they're going to give you a lot of money, you need to be able to woo them. You need to make them fall in love with you, not just your idea. Your idea will be great, but they want to know that they can trust and work with you just as much as you want to do. So in those preparations for it, you need to refine the core elements of your business idea into what we call an elevator pitch. A pitch deck, which is like the paperwork, essentially like a PowerPoint presentation that would be presented to people and shown to them. And the format of a business plan, which is a whole other thing we'll do. In about a month's time, we'll look at how to write a business plan. I did that back in December, and it was a really well-attended workshop, actually, because it actually shows you how to set that out so that investors will be able to look at this kindly. So once you do that, your elevator pitch is something like, my name is Dante St James. My idea is wet wipes. You know how when you're out and about and you get all sticky fingers and all that, but you can't get your wet wipes because they're in the car. Well, this is a convenient little pack that fits in your pocket and it solves that problem by being portable and always with you. The ideal customer I'm looking for is somebody who is like, got kids, got babies who are constantly getting messy and they need to clean themselves up and stay hygienic at the same time. That is an elevator pitch. It can be said in 30 seconds. Generally, as you're in a lift, you could pitch someone the idea in the trip it takes to go from level 5 to level 14 in a building. So this is helping you find the best possible inroads to investors through personal introductions and mutual interests. This is where you join networking organizations, networking events, what they call speed networking. So when you sit in front, there's a whole bunch of investors, there's a whole bunch of people wanting to pitch, or it could be pitch fests where you can go and actually pitch your idea to people who will coach you through it. I know in Darwin, we have the Darwin Innovation Hub, often runs those. You've got River City Labs and Fishburners in Brisbane will often do these sessions as well. And in Perth, I have no doubt you've got several of these kind of things as well, because Perth is a very, very living, breathing startup generating area right now. Developing a winning email outreach strategy helps you to get to as many people as you possibly can who may be interested in this kind of thing. So it will help you to make sure, but you need those email addresses. So you need to do a lot of research to find out who the decision makers are in investment companies and in other companies that aren't necessarily investors, but may be interested in your technology or interested in your process or your method in what you do. So some of the ideas for government places to go to in Queensland, go to the Department of Employment, Small Business and Training and see what grants they've got available. The Smart e-grants system as well. So Smart and then E, then grants online. It's a great place to start with to find out what grants are available for business to help you to get started or to increase your business. The Small Business Development Corporation of Western Australia also has a bunch of grants that help to grow new small businesses. And a lot of that run through places like Business Station in Gosnells and in Perth City, I believe they've got one there too. And I'm missing the other location, Joondalup, where the other one is. In Darwin, you can go through the places like the Territory Business Centre in Darwin, Alice Springs, Tennant Creek, and I believe there's an office in Catherine. That's through the Start, Run, Grow process, which is helping to grow small businesses through what we call a small business champion. They're all good places to start to point you at least in the area of what grants might be available to you to start and grow your businesses. And as Robert A. Rice Jr. said, an entrepreneur without funding is like a musician without an instrument. You're just standing on a stage, hoping that no one notices that you can't really do much, because you can't do much unless you've got money. That's the whole reality with business. And with growing your business, getting investors into your business, and starting that process of growing it from just a little startup to something important and something significant, something that you'll be remembered by. It's going to be kind of like a legacy for you. So thank you so much for joining this session this afternoon. I hope you got something out of this and at least some starting points that can help you to go and seek funding from either, those bootstrapping methods. So you look, your family, your friends, even for your own savings, maybe if you've got some. I don't have a lot. You go to equity investors, or then going to those government organizations who can provide at least some starting points to get you there. And if you've got a business enterprise center near you as well, they're a really great place to seek some kind of advice that can help you to go to the right places and connect with the right people, including some of those pitch nights where you might be able to get in front of those investors and find out exactly what it's going to take for you to get them to invest in a business idea just like yours. Now, we've had no questions during this particular session. I haven't really taken much of a breath to let you have any. If you do have some, please send your details through to my email address, which is Dante@Treaty. I'll just put this down. I've got a bit of an email backlog at the moment, so please excuse me if I take a few days to get back to you. But if you copy that email address in there, I'll happy to pass you on to any information I can possibly pass on to. And if there's a way that you can look to grow your business, please do it, because ultimately, no one got rich by having a job. Have a fantastic weekend. And if you join me next week, I've got another 4 webinars coming up. So please join me for those as well.